I'm Anil Kumar, and in this video I will share with you all what is required to solve questions based on linear equations. So we'll begin with a very simple concept, and I've taken a very simple question also here. The question is, sum of two numbers is 10. And we'll kind of build on this to understand many terms which will help us solve word problems based on linear equations. Right? Things which I'm going to discuss are, first, we need to define variables. Right? First is we have to define variables. Once you define variables, at times we have to also define the number set. What kind of numbers are we dealing with? Then we have to write equation which could represent the given situation. We can have alternate methods of solution. Now when I say alternate methods, we could think about tables, graphs, for example, right? So likewise, we will build on understanding of the subject, and then in the following videos, we are going to take more and more word problems. Okay, so let's begin with these topics. The question here is, sum of two numbers is 10. Let me start with defining variables. Defining variables is kind of like this, a let statement. So define variables using a let statement. We say let numbers be x and y. Okay. Now, second thing we say is define numbers. Now, what numbers? It's kind of confusing at times, but it makes sense. We could think about natural numbers. We could think about whole numbers. We could think about, for example, real numbers, right? And so on, correct? So there are different sets of numbers which we could think about when solving such questions. It's kind of important, right? How? Sometimes zeros are not valid and we are working in natural numbers. Whole numbers include 0. So like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 are whole numbers. Let me write down. Natural numbers are numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. Whole numbers will include 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And real numbers are all numbers on a number line. Think like this. So whenever we have something continuous, it is represented by real numbers. Okay, so once we have defined our variables and we know the number set, we can actually make an equation and solve it. So let's talk about equation now. When the two variables are x and y and their sum is 10, the equation is simply x plus y equals to 10. Correct? So we get an equation x plus y equals to 10, where x and y are two numbers. Now if the natural numbers are taken, then we can take values like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Right? Okay. Now let's talk about these two variables x and y. What are possible solutions? To find possible solutions, we can adopt trial and error. That is one method. The best way of trial and error is actually tables. So what we will do now is create a table so that we can define two numbers whose sum is 10. So let's do it. Let's make a table here. Okay. And we will write the numbers x and y. Okay. X and y. The condition is that x plus y equals to 10. Now if I am talking about natural numbers, I cannot take 0. So I'll have to start with 1. So if x is 1, then what can y be? Y has to be 9. 1 plus 9 is 10. If x is 2, y is 8. If x is 3, y is 7, and so on, right? And if x is 8, y has to be 2. And if x is 9, y should be 1, correct? So we get possible solutions. These are called possible solutions for the given equation. If x is 1, y is 9. If x is 2, y is 8. So if you have one equation and two variables, how many solutions you have? In this case, there are 9 solutions. Do you see that? So you can have multiple solutions of an equation with two variables. Okay, let me write like that. As you can see, we have 9 solutions when we are talking about natural numbers. And if I say we include whole numbers, then what? Well, in that case, for whole numbers, we could include 0, and with 0, we'll get 10. This is when we talk about whole numbers. And if I take 10 as the x value, y becomes 0, correct? So that becomes set of whole numbers. So one way, as I have shown you, we can define variables, equation, and find solution using table, right? The other way is, let's say graph. Let's see how to make a solution with the help of a graph. So I'll sketch a graph here. Since we are talking more or less about positive numbers, I'll keep positive side like this here. Okay, let me go like this. Okay. Now I'm going to draw a very rough sketch of graph. So let us say 0, 10. Now we're talking about whole numbers. If x is 0, let's say this is x for us and this is y. X is the independent variable, y is the dependent variable along the y-axis, right? 0 and 10, let's say this value is 0 and 10. Okay, we get this value, 0 and 10. And then we get value 10. If x is 10, y is 0, kind of here. Okay. And we get all the values in between. For 1, we have 9, and then, kind of like this. So let me write approximate. You understand. So these dots which I have made, they correspond to different values of x and y. So for each whole number value of x, we'll have a corresponding value of y. So that becomes our solution. Now this solution can be shown on a graph like this with these dots. We could also write this solution in another form, like coordinate points. So I could write this solution as coordinate points. Let me write down now solution as coordinate points. In coordinate points, we'll write as solution as 0, 10, 1, 9, 2, 8, 3, 7, so on till, let's say, 10, 0. Okay, so that also becomes a solution. Table is a solution. Graph is a solution. And this solution may be different for different set of numbers. So if we are talking about natural numbers, we cannot include zeros. If you're talking about whole numbers, we can include zeros. And if we talk about real numbers, then how will this graph be? Let's think about that. Okay. So let's say now we're talking about the real numbers. If x and y are real numbers, then what are possible values of x and y? To show that, what we can do is, we can have few numbers as we did, connect them with a line. So if I make a line connecting all these points with arrows on both the ends, then that becomes set of real numbers as shown on a number line. Do you see that? So that becomes the solution of our linear equation x plus y equals to 10 when we are talking about real numbers. You get it. So what we have learned in this particular video is that given a statement which is let's say statement, we can represent this statement in the form of an equation. We can represent this in the form of data. We can represent this in the form of a graph. Do you see that? And this is called a set of points. So there are many ways in which a situation can be described. And all this we'll talk about as modeling with linear equations. As this equation is linear equation, we'll term all this to model real life situation. So in this series, which is unit 5 for us, in this series we will learn how to solve word problems, writing them in the form of equations, providing solutions by any of these methods which we have discussed. And I hope this particular introduction helps you to get the whole concept, right? So these are the things to relate a statement which is a word problem for you at times, which is to be translated into the form of an equation from where you can generate data, graph, and the solution. You get a point, right? Now, important thing to understand here is we had only one equation, multiple solutions. Now, can you tell me how can I ensure that I get unique solution? Okay, so let's that be a good point to discuss. Let me put it in a block. How to get unique solution. Okay, that is possible if I relate x and y. If I say that x is equals to 4 times y, the two numbers are such that one number is 4 times the other and their sum is 10, then we have only one solution. As you can see, combination 2, 8. I should say 8, 2, I'm sorry. When I write x equals to 4y, then not this. Actually, I've changed it because if I write x equals to 4y, now x becomes dependent, right? So let me rewrite this as y equals to 1/4 of an x. Is that okay? Y is 1/4 of an x, so that becomes the right solution. Does make sense to you? Okay. So the idea is, if I have two conditions and two variables, then I can expect unique solution. But if I have open statement like we have here, we may have multiple solutions, correct? So that's the whole idea. So if I say that the value of y is 1/4 of that of the x, then the solution will be kind of here, right? So for x equals to 8, y is 2. So that becomes the solution when we impose another condition on the given statement, right? So at times we may have multiple conditions. Now if I have multiple conditions, then we may have one solution, we can have many solutions, or we may even have no solution. That is also possible, correct? So with that open mind, let's move on and try to solve some questions on linear relations. Thank you and all the best.